Welcome back to r/neighbors from hell, where people share stories about their crazy neighbors. And if you are new to my channel, please don't forget to subscribe to join our amazing community. And without any further ado, let's dive right into the stories. The first one is titled, HOA seized my house over unpaid dues and sold it. I'm not even part of the HOA. Ever since moving to this country, I have worked hard every single day and made something for myself. I started my own business working and traveling with my racehorses and have managed to keep myself out of debt. All of my friends have told me to stay away from homeowner associations, claiming that they are evil and nothing but a nuisance, and that is what I did. Well, what I thought I was doing anyway. You see, I assumed that all of these stupid letters I was getting periodically in the mail were just some annoying solicitations from my neighborhood's voluntary HOA. When I purchased my home for $130,000 in cash a little over 8 years ago, there was nothing on any documents I received saying that I had to oblige to some HOA. So, when some of those annual fee letters came in the mail, I just threw them out, thinking they were nothing but this association trying to scam me into paying for the pool's upkeep, which I did not use anyway. It was only $70 a year, but I genuinely did not think that this was mandatory. I owed the HOA less than $600 for all of the years I have lived there, $600, and they sell my entire house from under me. It just makes no sense. Another thing is that I am incredibly busy and I am out of town for weeks at a time. My neighbors are kind enough to mow my grass, bring my mail in, and keep an eye on my house. I had no idea that there was anything going on, no clue that my house was being foreclosed on or sold. I thought everything was normal until I received the most gut-wrenching phone call one morning from my neighbor Drew. Drew called to tell me that he found a letter taped to the front door saying that the house had been sold to such and such legal company in some master commissioner's sale. I assumed this had to be a mistake. How could it even be possible to sell someone's house without their knowledge, permission, or signing anything? I owned my house. I paid cash for it years ago. How can they legally do this? To me, this is communism. I finished my work where I was and immediately drove back home to see what was going on. After calling the company that purchased my home, I found out that they bought it for only $30,000 when I paid over $138,000 for it years ago. Thankfully, the company was willing to be patient and said that I could pay them essentially rent to live in my own house. At least I did not have to get up and move right away and had some time to gather my things during this horrible time. I began looking into what happened and discovered that there was supposed to be someone that contacted me prior to them going through with the sale. From what I was reading, the HOA basically thought that my home was abandoned and no one was living in it. They claim this is because I never responded to their letters. I'll admit that I did make a mistake in all of this by disregarding the HOA letters, but I truly thought they were solicitors' letters and not notices of actual fees and summons that I was responsible for. According to the HOA, they sent out someone to check on the home and contact me in person prior to going through with the sale. I was not home around the time that they said they did this, so I'm not surprised that they never got anywhere. It also mentioned that they made contact with my neighbors and no one could confirm if I lived there, so I decided to check. When I asked Drew, he said that definitely no one came and talked to him because he would have told them the truth, that I indeed still lived there, I was always just traveling. I could tell that he felt honestly terrible about what was going on. Drew was a wonderful gentleman who was raising 2 daughters by himself. I always made a point to bring them gifts when I would return from being gone for a while, mostly to show my appreciation for him keeping an eye on my home. My neighbor across the street, Tony, and his wife also confirmed that no one asked them anything. Lastly, my final neighbor on the right said that she had also heard nothing about them selling my home and no one asked her any questions. Everyone was very sympathetic to my issue and said that they would be willing to help however they could. I appreciated their gesture but wanted to make it clear I was not asking for any kind of handout. I received some news in the mail along with a check for $10,000 saying this is my cut of the payout from them selling, illegally in my opinion, my home. While it is nice to see some of this money, I would rather have my house and clear peace of mind that I was not going to be homeless soon. I guess I could stay at the horse barn if I had to. Also, if I had sold my house the right way, I probably would have gotten way more for it with the way the market was at the time. I thought about trying to just buy my house back but was unsure if this was worth it. I could have done it, but would have been pretty broke afterwards. At this point, I don't think I want to stay there under an HOA that just screwed me over and put me in a terrible predicament. My neighbors, on the other hand, had a different plan they had set in motion. One day, I was packing up some things in my home. I had decided that I could not stay in the neighborhood and that I would be more worth it to find somewhere else to live. I had a bad taste in my mouth and just honestly felt hurt by it all. Maybe I just did not understand the legal side of things with HOAs, but the whole thing just seemed unfair and wrong. A knock came at my door and it was Drew, my other immediate neighbors and several other people from my cul-de-sac. They were standing there with smiles, food, drinks and envelopes. Was there a party at my house that I didn't know about? I invited them in and they all immediately saw what I had been packing my belongings into boxes. Drew started telling me that everyone wanted me to stay and that they were all sorry that they couldn't have done anything to stop this from happening. Simultaneous answers and head nods could be seen from everyone standing in my kitchen and living room. That is when they all started bringing their envelopes and whatever foods and snacks they had brought. It was clear they expected me to open them all while they were there. I'm a quiet person and don't typically have this many people wanting to talk to me at one time, so I was shocked and feeling shy. I opened their letters nonetheless, as all of these people were kind enough to think of me. I realized very quickly after the first letter what was going on. All of my neighbors had pooled funds together to help me pay for the house so I could stay. There was even more than enough money. I was so humbled by this gesture of kindness from these people that I started crying. I've always been stoic and had not cried in years, so this was a rare event for me to shed tears of joy and appreciation. Drew and my neighbors hugged me and made my heart feel so full. At the end of the hug session and tears, I realized that one of the people I did not recognize. She approached me last after making brief eye contact and she introduced herself as Becky, the HOA board member leader. She expressed that she was very sorry for what had happened and that she felt responsible for it. So, not only was the HOA going to help me pay to get my house back, but they were also going to waive any future fees as an apology for this giant snafu. This entire experience was honestly a really terrible one, but in the end my friends, neighbors and the HOA joined together to make things right. And ripe stars, if you enjoy the stories about crazy HOAs, then I would really appreciate it if you could also like the video, because that would help my channel tremendously. Thank you so much in advance, your support is very much appreciated. And the next one was posted by user older_gent and it is titled 5-year-old Jenny, sad daughter of a meth head. A short-ish story to end a video on a warm note. All names are made up, by the way. I was an outside worker for a major utility company on a crew of 6 to 8 men for many years. At lunch break, one of my coworkers, Bob, told us of an incident that happened over the weekend. Bob and his wife Helen, both early 20s, lived in an apartment building. Friday night, Helen left something in her car and went out to get it around 8 p.m. As she walked out, she saw the little red-headed girl Jenny, who lived with her mother in the apartment next door. Jenny was sitting outside the door. "Hi Jenny," said Helen as she rushed to her car. Coming back, Helen noticed the tear streaks on Jenny's freckled face, and looking closer, it appeared that neither Jenny nor her clothes had been washed in several days. Helen stops and asks, "Hey honey, are you alright?" Jenny buried her face in her knees and simply said yes. Helen knelt down next to her and said, "What's wrong, sweetie?" Jenny quietly answered, "I can't go in and I'm hungry." Helen stood up and knocked on Crystal's, Jenny's mother's door, and received a shouted, "Go away!" from the other side. So Helen picked up Jenny and did exactly that. They went into Bob and Helen's apartment, where Bob raised a questioning eyebrow as Helen deposited Jenny on the couch with an "I'll make you something in just a minute, sweetheart, okay?" and told Bob that she would talk to him in a bit. Then Helen wrote a quick message on a sticky note and put it on Crystal's door, letting her know where Jenny was. Helen went back and made a bowl of chicken noodle soup and a sandwich, while Bob and Jenny talked about how super awesome it would be to visit SpongeBob SquarePants at his home in the ocean. Helen told Bob what had happened while Jenny happily ate her dinner, then had to convince a quietly furious Bob to not go next door and ream that druggie a new one. Bob and Helen had only been there a few weeks at that point, but already knew about what was going on next door. After eating, a freshly scrubbed Jenny with a full tummy and wearing one of Helen's t-shirts watched cartoons with Bob until she fell asleep. Around 10 the next morning, Crystal finally came over looking for her daughter, giving excuses like, "I'm sorry, I was not feeling well last night and took some NyQuil. I thought Jenny was in her room," etc. She thanked Helen and took Jenny home, promising to return the t-shirt as soon as Jenny got dressed. The rest of this story takes place over many lunchtime reports over a period of time. Over the following weeks, this happened more and more often, usually just having Jenny over for dinner and an hour or two of TV, sometimes staying the night while Crystal was on a drug binge or when customers came over to buy drugs or whatever else Crystal might be selling. Bob and Helen did not complain, as they had grown to love that little girl and had made the second bedroom into a little girl's room, complete with new clothes and toys for Jenny. They were torn on what to do, as reporting Crystal would result in Jenny going into foster care and they might never see her again. And at least this way, they could keep an eye on her and keep her relatively safe. Bob finally reached out to a lawyer through our union, explained the situation, and the lawyer gave Bob some guardianship papers and advised him to have Crystal sign them, but warned him that they were temporary guardianship, revocable with even a spoken word from Crystal, so don't piss her off. A few nights later, Crystal was having another drug party in her apartment, with Jenny safely with Bob and Helen, when her party was raided by the local police. As Crystal was being led away in handcuffs, Bob went running out with the paper and pen, yelling at the cop to please wait, let him talk to her for a moment. The cop allowed it, and Bob told Crystal that he had been meaning to give her this form, please sign it so they can keep Jenny safe with them instead of being put into the system while Crystal handled her business. Crystal said, "Yeah, fine, whatever," and the cop uncuffed her hand to let her sign and then took her away. The next afternoon, Sunday, the landlord put a notice of eviction on Crystal's door. Come Monday, Crystal came home, ripped up the notice, got some things out of her apartment, and left without a word to Jenny, Bob, or Helen. About 3 years later, Bob and Helen legally adopted Jenny, still no word from Crystal. About 9 years after that, our entire crew gathered to watch Bob and Helen's daughter Jenny get awarded her high school diploma. Still no word from Crystal. And I gotta say, Ripe Stars, that is a very heartwarming story, and I am so happy that Jenny found a loving family. I wish all stories had a happy ending like this one. And the next one was posted by user PastGreen3754 on our own subreddit r/ripestories, and it is titled, "A whole neighbor trespasses while I am on vacation. My best friend and I were having coffee this morning and she started talking about the below incident. So I just had to jump on here and tell it. I moved into my home 20 years ago. My a-hole neighbor at the time moved in a year later. This incident happened a year after she moved in, so around 17 years ago. A-hole neighbor was not very friendly. We even brought her cookies when they moved in, and she told me she does not eat from people she does not know and closed the door in my face. Other neighbors tried as well and got similar responses. There were some other smaller issues with her, but this was the biggest. My driveway is very big. Imagine it being U-shaped with an eye at the rounded part of the U that leads to my 2-door garage. It is big enough that when I have had parties in the past, I've been able to fit 12 cars on it. Well, my family was away on vacation but driving home on our last day. A friend was house/pet sitting for me and called to tell me my neighbor was having a pool party and there were about 8 cars parking on my driveway. She told them they couldn't park there, but their response was, "Neighbor said I could." I was only 1 hour away and told her I would handle it when I got there. When I got home, I immediately went to the neighbor. When she opened the door, she said, "Oh, I thought you were on vacation." Explained I just got back and asked why she thought it was okay to use my property. She said, "Well, why not? You were not using it." I told her she had 5 minutes to get the cars off my property. She said the party will be over in a couple of hours and my garage was not blocked. I repeated the 5 minutes again. An hour later the cars were still there, so I called 2 different tow companies and let them know I had 4 cars for each to be towed ASAP. Well, it was like a beautiful ballet watching as these 8 tow trucks danced in sync with each other as they towed all 8 cars. I then put a big sign on my front door with the name of the tow companies and phone numbers and posted them on my front door. 3 hours later, my bell was ringing and banging on my door. I simply spoke through the doorbell camera in a very robotic voice and said, "I'm sorry, any vehicle that was breaking the law by trespassing has been towed. The sign outside will supply you with the information to recover the car." And then I went radio silent. People were upset, but believe it or not, they were not as upset with me as they were with the neighbor because she told them that she had my permission to park there. They all demanded she pay the towing fees, ended up costing my neighbor somewhere around $2,400 for all 8 cars. Never have had this problem again. The funny thing is, my best friend that I was having coffee with and reminiscing about this story was that very a-hole neighbor. She not long after apologized to all the neighbors and explained that why it was no excuse, she was under pressure with her upcoming divorce, custody fight and just hated everyone in the world at that point. She got her divorce, full custody from her now ex-alcoholic husband, and we are now besties. See, sometimes things turn out good. So yeah, even after you indirectly tow your neighbor, this story proves that you can still become friends with them. What a beautiful ending. And the next one was posted by user SCP-682 on our own subreddit r/ripe stories and it is titled "Squatting a Wedding." Permission given to read in a video. Lord have mercy, I never thought I would be posting here about this saga again, but here I am and here's the tale. It is dramatic, it is ridiculous and thoroughly insane. I have a new brother-in-law. My little sister just married him yesterday. He is a good man. He's a little quick to anger and very quick to use his fists, but only in defense of his loved ones. You can insult and bully him all day long and he will sit there with a serene expression on his face. Touch a loved one though and you will regret it. What happened yesterday was beyond the pale horrible. The ceremony was held on my newly acquired property, see my previous post in the subreddit for information on that, and was quite lovely. Until it wasn't. The bridal march was interrupted by the roar of ATVs and whooping. Then, out of nowhere, the squatters and some of their friends, not the son, he has contact with them, rode into view wielding paintball guns. They did exactly what you would think they would do, being completely out of their minds. My sister's dress was quickly transformed into a twisted mimicry of a Jackson Pollock painting. It was horrible. She burst out in tears and the crushers roared with laughter. I was the first to move in indignation, but her soon-to-be husband moved faster once he got into motion. He threw a folding chair directly at the lead crusher and it tangled in the wheel well, sending her, the matriarch of the clan, flying out of the seat. The other 5, yes 5, swerved to avoid it and rolled the ATVs. And by the way, Ripe Stars, if someone did not listen to the previous story of user SCP, basically him and his family have to deal with a bunch of entitled squatter neighbors. Anyway, I'm going to save you the gory descriptions of what brother-in-law did to the ones he could get to before we all managed to pull him off of them. It is not pretty and we are pretty sure he's going to be charged with assault because of the severity. The first one who rolled his ATV broke his shin in 2. The second one dislocated his elbow and knee and lost 3 fingers when the third one's ATV caught it in the sharp front grille. Number 3 was relatively unscathed, but the number 4 was nearly killed. Both his arms were shattered because he had launched out before the other 2 and they had run over them. His right femur was broken, that is just what we could see. The matriarch who got launched because of the folding chair was relatively unharmed as well, but also was closest to brother-in-law. You can guess what that earned her. Number 5 landed into the side of a muddy hill on the property, barely avoiding being crushed by her own ATV by maybe 3 feet. I might be forced to pay for some medical care to keep this hush-hush, it depends on how the DA looks at things here. Personally, I am happy they weren't killed as they easily could have been. They were obviously drunk and I have a small gun collection. Had we been in the house, I would have just been tipsy enough to shoot at them. I am still a little in shock that they would go to these lengths. I'm going to be filing a restraining order first thing on Monday, as this has gone much too far. I will also be setting ATV caltrops up if that is legal. At that point, if they run over them and get hurt, it is up to them to drag themselves back to civilization. And by the way, Ripe Stars, just a little warning in advance, this story is slightly gory and violent, so if you're not interested in hearing that, then please don't listen to this story. And Ripe Stars, with this we have reached the end of the video. However, if you still cannot get enough of my content, then I would highly suggest to check out my endless binge watch playlist, which will soon show up in the left corner of the screen. In addition, I would really appreciate it if you could not only subscribe to the channel, but also turn on the bell notifications, which you can do by clicking on the little bell icon right next to the subscribe button. This will help my channel tremendously, and this will make sure that you don't miss any of my videos. Furthermore, if you want to see additional Ripe content that I don't post on YouTube, then I would suggest to head on over to patreon.com/ripeyoutube for more than 50 exclusive videos that you will not see anywhere else. Thank you so much for your amazing daily support, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.